Imagine working at the same school for 15 years with dedication and respect, and then overnight being falsely accused and fired in front of everyone. That's what happened to Rosa, but she didn't shout, didn't fight back. Years later, it was her who unlocked the school gates, with a principal's badge proudly hanging from her neck. The morning seemed like any other. Rosa Thompson, wearing her light blue uniform, pushed the cleaning cart through the halls of the school where she had worked for over 15 years. She knew every corner of that place, the lockers that always got stuck, the scribbled whiteboards in the science room, the windows that let in the soft autumn light. She cleaned with care, as if tending to her own home. She was respected by many teachers and adored by some of the children, who affectionately called her Miss Rosa. But that day, something felt off. A strange silence hung in the air, sideways glances in the halls, and an unusual lack of greetings. Around 9 a.m., she was called to the principal's office. That wasn't normal. Rosa was cleaning the hallway when one of the secretaries said, "Mrs. Bennett would like to speak with you now." Confused, Rosa adjusted the bun in her hair and made her way to the office. When she walked in, she saw not only the principal, but also 2 members of the school board and a community police officer. "Rosa, we have a serious matter to discuss," the principal began in her usual cold tone. "A sum of money was reported missing from the teacher's lounge last week. After an internal investigation, we believe you may be involved." Rosa's eyes widened. "Excuse me? Involved? Me? There must be some mistake. I would never—" "There's no camera in that room, but you were the only staff member who entered it outside regular hours," the principal interrupted. "I went in to return a book I found in the courtyard," she said, her voice trembling. But no one seemed interested in listening. "Based on the findings, we are terminating your contract effective immediately," the principal continued. "You're free to collect your belongings. Of course, you may appeal the decision, but it has been made." Rosa felt her legs go weak. The police officer stepped forward but didn't touch her. There were no handcuffs, only the weight of humiliation. As she left the office, the once familiar hallways now felt like a courtroom. Students whispered. Teachers looked away. She pushed her cart back to the janitor's area, took off her badge with trembling hands, and said her quiet goodbye. Outside, the wind blew colder than usual. She pulled her thin coat tightly around her and walked to the bus stop, holding back tears. Rosa wasn't just a fired employee. She was a mother, a woman who had built her dignity day by day in that place. And now all of it had been stripped away by an accusation she hadn't even had the chance to contest. But what she didn't yet know was that this deep pain was only clearing the way for a much greater story. The creaky door of the small wooden house opened as Rosa walked in, still clutching her purse as if it held the weight of the world. The clock read nearly noon, much earlier than her children were used to seeing her come home. Michael, her 10-year-old eldest, was finishing his math homework at the kitchen table. Emma was asleep in her crib. Rosa forced a smile when she saw her son, but her eyes didn't lie. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, frowning at her tired expression. "Of course, sweetheart, I just wasn't feeling too well today. I decided to come home early," she replied, trying to sound convincing. Michael didn't press further, but deep down he knew something was wrong. Rosa went straight to the bedroom, closed the door gently, and for the first time in a long time, let her tears fall freely. She sat on the edge of the bed, pressing her eyes shut tightly, as if that could erase what had happened that morning. Her mind kept replaying the principal's words, a cruel echo. She thought about the suspicious stares, the silence from her co-workers, and the complete lack of anyone standing up for her. It felt like she had lost more than just a job. She had lost her trust, her dignity, her footing. Later, while preparing dinner, she overheard 2 neighbors whispering outside the window. "I heard she got caught with money from the school. What a shame, and with 2 small children to raise." Rosa closed the curtain without saying a word. She didn't want explanations, she didn't want confrontations. She just wanted that day to end. But the following days weren't any different. People began to avoid her on the street. At the market, she felt the stares. At her children's school, the whispers seemed louder. Michael, who used to come home full of stories about school, now stayed quiet. One day, after being teased by a classmate, he came home with teary eyes. "Mom, is it true that you did something wrong?" he asked, his voice low. Rosa froze. "Where did you hear that, honey?" "A boy said that's what people are calling you." She felt her stomach twist, but she took a deep breath, knelt down in front of him and said, "Listen to me, my love. Never let ugly words define who you or your family are. The truth. We prove that, with time." Michael nodded silently and hugged his mother tightly. That night, after putting Emma to sleep and watching Michael drift off, Rosa sat at the kitchen table, staring at a piece of cold bread and a cup of coffee. She still didn't know how she would turn everything around. But in that moment, in the middle of silence and shame, a seed was planted. The desire to reclaim her own story. Time didn't heal, but it taught her how to endure. It had been 2 months since the dismissal. Rosa still avoided crowded places, but she had to maintain her children's routine. Michael was still going to school, though quieter than before, and Emma, now almost 2, had begun saying her first words. It was on a rainy afternoon, as Rosa walked home from the market, that a car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down slowly, revealing a familiar face. Mrs. Dorothy Lane, the former history teacher from the school where Rosa had worked for 15 years. A cultured woman, always kind, who walked with slow steps, but carried the observant gaze of someone who saw beyond appearances. "Rosa, do you have a moment?" she asked in a gentle voice. Rosa hesitated but stepped closer. "Of course, Mrs. Lane, good afternoon. You know, I never believed what they said about you. Not for a second. But I didn't want to interfere. I was afraid it would seem intrusive, and I regret that." Rosa felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you, just hearing that already means a lot." Mrs. Lane motioned toward the passenger seat. "I didn't come just to talk. I brought something for you." In the back seat there was a box filled with books, notebooks, and study guides. Rosa's eyes widened. "Is this materials from a free course at the local community college? A friend of mine volunteers there. When she found out I knew you, she asked me to deliver them. She said women like you don't need pity. They need opportunity." Rosa was silent for a few moments, holding back tears. I don't even know what to say." "Just say you'll try," replied Mrs. Lane with a gentle smile. That night, after putting her children to bed, Rosa spread the materials across the table. An old dream, buried by circumstance, was beginning to resurface. The desire to study. She enrolled in the night prep course, designed for adults who hadn't had the chance to finish school. Classes were held 3 times a week, and to afford a babysitter for those nights, Rosa started working as a caregiver for the elderly during the day. The routine was exhausting. Rosa woke up at 5 a.m., made breakfast, left Emma with a neighbor who helped with the kids, and walked Michael to school. Then she went to work. At night, she attended classes, tired, but with bright, determined eyes. It was there, in the middle of math equations she hadn't seen in decades and texts she read aloud to herself, that Rosa began to find her voice again. Each new lesson was a small victory. Each filled notebook was proof that there was still a path ahead, and that she was ready to follow it. It was a Saturday morning when everything truly changed. Rosa was folding laundry on the small living room couch when she heard the front door slam shut. Michael stormed in, eyes filled with tears, his face flushed. He threw his backpack on the floor and headed straight to his room. "Michael, what happened?" Rosa asked, worried. The boy hesitated for a few seconds before answering, his voice tight with emotion. "I hate that school." She walked over slowly, sat on the edge of the bed and asked again, more gently, "Son, tell me what happened." Michael sniffled, trying to hold back his tears. "One of the boys called me the son of someone who does bad things. Said I only go to that school because they feel sorry for me. That my mom got kicked out because of money." Rosa felt the ground fall out from under her, She had always known the stain of that false accusation still lingered, but hearing it come from her own son's mouth struck like a blade to the chest. The pain cut deep, but facing Michael, she took a deep breath, steadied her voice, and spoke with strength. "Look at me, son." Michael looked up, his eyes still watery. "Your mother never took anything from anyone. Never. What happened to me was an injustice, and I promise you, one day you'll be proud of our story." He nodded silently and hugged her tightly. Rosa stayed there, holding her son in her arms as if sealing a pact. That night, while Emma slept in the makeshift crib and Michael worked on his homework at the kitchen table, Rosa picked up a blank notebook and wrote 3 words on the first page: "A new life begins." She didn't yet know how or when, but she was certain. This wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. It was about giving her children a different future, one not stained by the lies of the past. In the months that followed, Rosa doubled down on her studies. She earned a spot in a high school equivalency program, and later, a partial scholarship to study education. It wasn't easy. There were days when her body begged for rest, when her mind whispered it wasn't worth it. But all it took was remembering her son's face that Saturday, and she kept going. Rosa began walking with her head held high. She didn't need to shout to be heard. Her actions spoke for her. Her effort screamed, and inside her, something began to bloom. A new kind of strength, quiet, but steady. The strength of someone who doesn't wait for justice from others, but builds her own. Years passed. The small house where Rosa had raised Michael and Emma was still modest, but now it had bookshelves filled with books, framed certificates on the living room wall, and above all, an air of hard-earned dignity. Rosa graduated with honors in education. She had been one of the most dedicated students in her class. She received praise from professors, completed internships in public schools around the area, and never showed up late, even on days when she went straight from work to night classes. She landed a job as a substitute teacher and was soon being called regularly for more stable positions. The years of studying had left their marks in her more tired eyes, her roughened hands, and a body that no longer rested like it once did. But they had also ignited a new glow. Rosa discovered she loved to teach. She had a natural patience and a sincere way of connecting with her students. Many of them, in fact, saw her as more than a teacher. They saw a woman who had faced life head-on. When Emma entered elementary school, she proudly told everyone that her mom was a teacher. Michael, now 20, worked as an assistant at a local office and took online courses at night, inspired by the strength he had seen in his mother since childhood. Rosa, meanwhile, remained steadfast. She was promoted to academic coordinator at a municipal school. She was respected by the teachers, loved by the parents, and looked up to as a leader by the school's staff. But she never made a show of her past. She never mentioned the school where she had been fired. She kept it all inside, like a scar that had stopped hurting, but never really disappeared. Then, one rainy March morning, the unexpected happened. The phone rang. "Hello? Is this Mrs. Rosa Thompson?" asked a formal voice on the other end. "Yes, this is she. I'm calling from the Department of Education. We're restructuring the leadership at several schools in the area, and your name was recommended by more than one member of our team. One of the schools in question is Jefferson Community School." Silence. Rosa felt the name echo in her chest. It was the school. That school. "Would you be open to a conversation about being considered for the principal position?" She didn't answer right away. She thought of everything she had lived through, the tears, the suspicious looks, the cleaning cart she had once pushed through those halls. And now, this call. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady. "I'd be happy to talk." After hanging up, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor for a few moments. Then she smiled. Not a smile of revenge, but a smile of someone who knows every step was worth it. The past had come knocking at her door, but this time she would answer as a different woman. The gate of Jefferson Community School was still the same. The dark green paint, the subtle creak as it opened, the white sign with letters slightly faded by time. But that day, everything felt different. Rosa parked her car across the street. Before stepping out, she sat for a few seconds, staring at the building's facade. Her heart was racing, her hands resting on the steering wheel. She took a deep breath. 15 years had passed since the last time she set foot in that place. And now she wasn't returning with a broom. She came holding a principal's folder. She wore a navy blue blazer, her hair neatly tied back, her steps confident. She entered through the main gate and walked toward the front office. The hallways seemed smaller than she remembered, maybe because she now stood taller. Some longtime staff members recognized her immediately. Polite smiles, discreet glances, visible surprise. The secretary greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson. The principal's office is being prepared. May I show you the way?" "Of course," Rosa replied with a gracious smile. Walking those halls again stirred old memories. The spot where someone once knocked over her cleaning bucket, the muffled laughter of cruel students, the teacher's lounge, where it all began. But now, the pain no longer hurt. It simply taught. When she entered the principal's office, she saw a stack of documents on the desk, a potted plant in the corner by the window, and a bulletin board filled with photos from past school events. She sat down calmly and took it all in. Then, from her bag, she pulled out a small framed photo of her children, Michael at age 10 and baby Emma in her arms. She placed it on the desk. This new journey would begin with them by her side. Later that day, while organizing the first reports of the week, a veteran teacher knocked on the door. "Mrs. Thompson, may I come in?" she asked, a bit nervously. "Of course. Come in." The woman hesitated, then offered a soft smile. "I'm not sure if you remember me. I was the library assistant when everything happened." Rosa nodded. "Yes, I remember. I just wanted to say, it's an honor to see you here. A lot of people knew that what happened wasn't right, but no one had the courage to speak up. I'm sorry for not saying anything." Rosa looked at her, empathy in her eyes. "It's okay. What matters is now. And today, we're building something new." The teacher smiled, relieved, and left. Rosa returned to her desk, heart warmed. There was no bitterness, no need to prove anything. The simple fact that she was there, sitting in the same chair once used to judge her, said it all. That afternoon, at the school's front entrance, Emma appeared with her backpack on her shoulders. "Mom." Rosa smiled at the sight of her. "Sweetheart, how was your first day of school?" Emma walked over and hugged her, right there in front of everyone. A simple gesture, but full of meaning, right there in front of the world. Rosa had won, with silence, hard work, and dignity. In the third week of her leadership, Rosa organized a general meeting with the teaching and administrative staff of Jefferson Community School. The agenda was simple: to present the school's new core values, create a space for open dialogue, and align goals for the semester. The teacher's lounge was full. Some people knew her from the past, others only through her resume and the new principal badge she wore. There was respect in the air, but also a quiet tension. After all, in that very room, many remembered the day she was accused and dismissed without the chance to defend herself. Rosa didn't start with formal introductions. She chose to tell a story. 15 years ago, an employee at this school was let go for something she didn't do. She wasn't given a chance to explain. She walked out the back door in silence. At the time, she thought she would never set foot here again. But time has a strange way of teaching us what truly matters. Some people exchanged glances. Others lowered their eyes. Rosa continued. Today, that woman returns to this very building, not to fix the past, but to help build a fairer present, a school where no one will be judged without being heard, where dignity comes before appearances, and where every student, staff member, and teacher will have the space they deserve. Silence. Thick. Respectful. Then, from the back of the room, someone stood up, a figure Rosa knew well. Hair now grayer, posture less imposing, but the gaze still firm. Mrs. Bennett. The former principal, now nearing retirement, had been invited as an external consultant for a district project. She hadn't expected to see Rosa there, and even less so, sitting in the very chair she once occupied. She asked to speak. "I acknowledge that mistakes were made," she said, looking around the room. "And even though time has passed, some marks remain. What impresses me, Mrs. Thompson, is the way you chose to come back." Rosa nodded in quiet thanks. "I didn't come back to retaliate. I came back to transform. And I hope everyone here is willing to walk with me in that direction." Mrs. Bennett said nothing more. But there was something different in her eyes. It wasn't admiration, perhaps something deeper, the recognition of the strength of someone she once tried to erase. At the end of the meeting, many came forward to congratulate Rosa. Others simply smiled quietly, as if finally understanding the weight of her presence there. That afternoon, alone in her office, Rosa wrote on the planning board, "It's not about coming back on top, it's about coming back in peace." And in that simple sentence, she closed a chapter, not with revenge, but with wisdom. The sky was still tinged with soft pink when Rosa parked her car in the Jefferson Community School lot. It was 6:45 a.m., and the city was just beginning to wake up. The wind blew cold, but gently. She carried a thermos of coffee in one hand and a folder of notes in the other. She wore a dark coat over her formal attire. Her footsteps echoed softly through the empty hallways. She turned on the lights one by one, opened doors, straightened chairs. She was the same woman who years before had done this with a cleaning cart, but now she did it as a leader, with the same care and a new posture. Rosa entered the principal's office and set the thermos on her desk. Beside it, a recent photo. Her, Michael, and Emma in front of the school. Emma, now 16, smiled with the same eyes Rosa had once watched over through sleepless nights. At 7:15, students began to arrive. Teachers too. The school was waking up. As Rosa reviewed the weekly schedule, she heard a gentle knock at the door. "Come in." Emma appeared wearing her high school uniform, earbuds hanging around her neck. "Just came by for a hug before class," she said, already walking toward her. Rosa smiled, closing her notebook. She stood and opened her arms. "And how's my favorite student?" "Mom." "Okay, one of my favorites," she laughed. The two hugged in the middle of the room. A simple hug, but filled with everything they had lived through together. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart. Now go, or you'll be late." Emma ran off, smiling. Rosa watched her until she disappeared down the hallway. At the front entrance of the school, Rosa stood for a few more minutes. She watched the students arrive, the smiles, the hurried footsteps. Every face that passed through that gate was a reminder that it had all been worth it. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and smiled. There, in the very place where she had once been wounded, she now cultivated respect, learning, and hope. It wasn't about defeating others. It was about overcoming herself. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and share it with someone who believes in the power of dignity and quiet new beginnings. Do you know a story like this? Or have you ever had to start over when everything felt lost? Tell us in the comments below. We'll see you in the next video. And remember, sometimes the best response is coming back with peace in your heart.